Hello, I'm Hovik Manucharyan, and today is day 13 of the blockade of Artsakh by Azerbaijan, and we are continuing our coverage of this as Grung and 168 hours in an effort to increase the quantity of English language coverage of this humanitarian disaster. Our guest today is Edgar Elbakyan. Edgar is a political scientist and social thinker based in Yerevan, Armenia. He is a co-founder of the Armenian Project, a nonprofit organization which contributes to enhancing national civil society. Welcome, Edgar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So as I said, the blockade is more than 13 days old now, and 120,000 people remain trapped in the Republic of Artsakh. Supermarket shelves are empty. Essential medicine is running out. And on Friday, December 23, a meeting between Bayramov, Lavrov, I was going to say but the last segment of that meeting could not make it for whatever reason. And let's talk about that first. So Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov announced to the media that Arad Mirzoyan had cancelled at the last minute, and therefore only Ceyhun, Bayramov and Lavrov met. Lavrov stressed that the diplomatic channels were not used for coordination and that they learned from the Armenian MFA's announcement that Arad Mirzoyan could not make it. Meanwhile, according to Channel 5, the Armenian side did not cancel the meeting and had only requested to move the meeting to a later date, citing Arad Mirzoyan and the Armenian Foreign Ministry. So while the Armenian government is declaring that the Lachin or Berzor corridor is the responsibility of the Russian peacekeepers and attacking Russians for not employing force to remove the fake environmentalists, Azerbaijan is also attacking Russia. And these fake environmentalists are constantly provoking the Russian peacekeeping contingent. All this intro just to ask you the question, do you think that Mirzoyan should have gone to Moscow for these, what would say, sham peace negotiations? I mean, we all sort of understand the importance of diplomacy, but some of the statements made in Moscow also seem to be at least if not neutral, there would be more pro-Azeri than pro-Armenian.
Thank you again for inviting me. Yes, you enumerated a whole list of questions. I'll try to answer them turn by turn. So first of all, going to negotiations is a diplomatic means of securing your national interests and national agenda. Refraining from negotiations can mean one thing, that you don't see any opportunity to secure your interests. So you have just one option: to démarche. Yes. Secondly, there is a very widely held notion in the Armenian society, both in the diaspora and in the motherland, this notion of poor capitulator, poor Nikol. What can he do? What could he do? Meaning that what can he do against Azerbaijan, for example? But we are beholding constantly for 2 years after capitulation that this poor Nikol, in brackets of course, has courage to go against Russia, to attack Russia, and he does this in a very open manner, and the whole world community beholds this. So where does his courage come from? Because attacking Russia is much more dangerous than attacking Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is weaker and smaller than Russia. So again, we see that the problem is not resources, the problem is not power, the problem is how you put forward your goals. The problem is in goals. So this government does not have any goal to not even attack Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan has attacked us, to defend Armenia against Azerbaijan, to defend Artsakh against Azerbaijan. Thirdly, this Berzor corridor issue. We can remember very easily that some months and 2 months ago, before this event, the de facto Armenian government was declaring that they are putting much endeavor much effort. They are endeavoring to bring Stepanakert vis-a-vis Baku to the negotiations table, and they were trying to elucidate this policy as, look, we are bringing them back to the negotiation table, meaning that somebody, for example, Kocharyan, kicked Artsakh out of the negotiations table.
And it was being painted as a glorious victory.
Yes, and the victory, again in brackets, has come. Now, as we already know, even from open sources, not from semi-open or closed sources, we know that so-called Azerbaijani eco-activists came, they blocked the road, and through or via Russian peacekeepers, they gave their demands to official Stepanakert. So now the dream of the de facto Armenian government has come true. Now Baku and Stepanakert are directly negotiating. The only problem is that the power is not equal. The power ratio is not equal, and Azerbaijan has put forward all its demands, and to back these demands all his state power. And on the other hand, we have nothing, because Armenia has, de facto Armenian government has withdrawn itself from protecting Artsakh.
Speaking of so-called direct negotiations, at the meeting Bayramov and Lavrov, as I said, openly used pro-Azeri talking points, and specifically Lavrov seemed to blame Armenians for not allowing the Azerbaijani so-called protesters to access the Kashan mine last minute. The Armenian response obviously has been clear, that these mines should be inspected by international bodies that have trust from all sides. And Ruben Vartanyan, in an interview with Ian Bremer, said that demands of the so-called eco-activists put and the conditions that they put were sort of so unreasonable that they led to that impasse. But what I want to understand, one of the sort of most critical rights, the human rights, I mean, to travel freely, to move freely, whether it's for healthcare or anything else, is essentially being sort of downplayed. What can Armenia do today? What would a leader that is sort of concerned about the fate of Armenians in Artsakh do? And what would be the first thing you would do, for instance?
So the answer comprises maybe two parts. First, short-term solutions and long-term solutions. Short-term solutions can involve, for example, mobilizing both the Armenian people here in the motherland and in diaspora around this cause. For example, some foreign countries have issued anti-Azerbaijani declarations, but if we dig deeper into those cases, we'll learn that it's thanks to efforts of diasporal organizations, mostly Armenian Revolutionary Federation, Dashnaktsion, but not thanks to the de facto Armenian government. And also in Armenia we see that from the first side people are mobilized. At least some part of the population is mobilized around this cause, but we see that they are fragmentized because they comprehend the roots of this issue differently, so hence they comprehend the solutions thereof differently. So the first thing a real national government should do, in any cases, by the way, not only in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh issue, but in all cases about all agendas, is providing really national mobilization, national unity. Then from operational, let's say, solutions, we learned yesterday or the other day that Armenia continues giving free air passage to Azerbaijan via its territory to Nakhichevan, which is now under Azerbaijani occupation, and they are getting money for this, and they are really happy. They say that it's like a planned activity, but every planned activity can be postponed. For example, the meeting in Moscow between Bayramov, Lavrov and Mirzoyan was also a planned activity, but it was postponed, it was cancelled. So the same about this Azerbaijan-Nakhichevan plane trips, they didn't cancel it. Coming to long-term solutions, you know, army again. We have our army up till now, regardless of the very fact that this capitulatory regime comprehends our army not as a safeguard of our security, but something continuation of the previous regime or continuation of the Russian influence in this territory. So it's a very deep problem, because from the very moment when you comprehend your army as something political itself, not political in terms that it's created to safeguard national interests, prosperous national state in this territory, but political something from outside. So they comprehend, like our generals, they got education in Russia, so maybe they have some connections from some connections with Russian Silaviks, etc., etc. It's politicization of the army, and it's them who are politicizing army, not, for example, a position. So, and that's why they don't strengthen the army. You know, there is a very good American film, Beautiful Mind. It's a very well-known film, and at the very crucial moment, hero understands that a girl can't be real. She doesn't grow old. I really do believe that at some point our population, our people will understand that this government is not a real, it's not an Armenian. For example, when did we hear the word Banagashinition, army constructing, last time? Really? Especially from Armenian public television, from other pro-government media outlets, etc. Maybe last year or 2-3 years ago.
Going back to Moscow, Bayramov also attacked Artsakh State Minister Ruben Vartanyan, saying that the sooner Vartanyan leaves the region, the better. And Bayramov said that Vartanyan, that before Vartanyan, the authorities in Artsakh were cooperating more. And previously we know that Aliyev had accused Vartanyan of being sent to Artsakh by Russia, which Lavrov denied again. He said, in fact, his citizenship had been revoked at his request. But I would like to ask you, how would you evaluate Ruben Vartanyan's tenure so far? Would you have any comments on sort of, you know, this Artsakh state's body's response to this crisis?
First of all, I don't know him personally, in contrast to some other Yerevan-based and Stepanakert-based Armenian elite representatives. I don't know him in person. I'm trying to analyze, as a political scientist, his actions, and so far I have come to the conclusion that he has some far-going ambitions, which is not good or bad. I'm just constating the facts as they are, in my opinion. I really do believe in his sincerity in parts when he criticized the Armenian government for being so, let's say, moderate.
Indifferent?
Yes, indifferent. Because even for him, he's trying to be a politician, statesman, but even for him, maybe it was very difficult to comprehend fully that the situation nowadays we have in Armenia and in Artsakh is not just because of the trends and developments outside Armenia, because the situation is so worse, and not because of the very actions that the Armenian government started to do since 2018. And he's really, I think, he's really astonished that the things run like this. Coming to Azerbaijan's perception around his person, again, I'm going to speak about perception, not the facts, because still it's very hard to thoroughly state all the facts. We need some more time, some more analysis. But Azerbaijan's perception at this point is already clear for me. They comprehend Vartanyan's figure as someone who is trying to rise Artsak's importance in international relations and in the regional relations. And at this point they are right that it can be a deed, it can be an action conducted and kicked off by Russia, because at some point I think in the Kremlin they understood that with this Armenia they can't secure their interest in Karabakh, because de facto Armenian government is not a stable and sound partner, and they tried to make their own game, somehow resembling what took place in Georgia after Saakashvili. Again, a wealthy man, businessman with political ambitions, with his own money. So Vartanyan is not going to resort to Russia and say, I need some money for my political activity. He has his own money, and not only his own money, some other monies at his disposal, etc. So that's why they are so, Baku, I mean, is so much concerned with his activities, because with the previous guys, they had already established their modus operandi. I don't mean that they were cooperating and, for example, Araik, Pashinyan or others were okay for Baku. No, not a single Armenian, especially in Artsakh, is okay for Baku. But Vartanyan is, in their perception, like a game changer now. That's why they think that they should uproot this issue right now.
With our previous guest discussed a little bit more in more detail sort of various reasons why Russia is acting this way or another, but how about specifically in terms of relations with Russia? What should Armenian leadership do? Change the balance a little bit. I mean, I don't want to sort of ask the question of what could peacekeepers have done. We all know that it's sort of all like at the state level, and the Russian peacekeepers are doing what's in the interest of the Russian government. But what are Russia's hands completely tied? What needs to be changed externally, maybe outside of our control? Do we need to wait until the war in Ukraine, for instance, is over and just weather the storm? Are there things in the Armenia, Russia, and even maybe Artsakh, Russia bilateral relationships that can be improved?
Alliances are built on mutual interests. So at first you need to have, let's say, co-interestship, and then alliance. You mentioned what not need to be done, because we cannot control factors and developments that are external, right, outside Armenia, and that's why I want to speak about internal developments. So from 2018, in Armenia we had a new elite, an Armenian elite from ethnic terms, but Turkish elite in its essence, which constructs the Armenian identity and the Armenian interests in a very, very different way. From 1991 up till 2018, our interests and our identity constructed in a way that, okay, we are Armenians, we have Nagorno-Karabakh issue, we need to defend our compatriots and Armenia itself, so we need weapon. Where can we get it? From Russia. Okay, we get it. So we need to be allies. So we are allies. From Russian perspective during these years, okay, I am Russia. I need to have my presence in the South Caucasus region as a post-Soviet territory. So what do I have there? Okay, Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. So I need to provide weapons to armaments to Armenia and also to Azerbaijan, because if I don't provide them with weapons, they also have this Nagorno-Karabakh issue, they are going to resort to Turkey. But my utmost goal is to have my own presence and sole presence in this region. So that's why they were providing Azerbaijan with ammunition, arms as well. But there was a very, very huge difference, both in terms of how heavy the weaponry was. For example, only we did have these Iskander systems, but also there was a difference in terms of price. Azerbaijan purchased it on market-based principles. We got this weaponry through domestic or internal prices. Let's put it in this jargon way. But from 2018, the very perception of what we want, who we are, and what our national interests are was being changed. And that's why Armenia's alliance with Russia, or Russia's alliance with Armenia, is degrading. Because it's us, of course not us, but the de facto Armenian government who changed the perception of our interests. That's why we are losing this partner, this ally. We are losing Iran as well, and we are acquiring nobody, literally nobody. Even from the western part of the world, we are not acquiring an ally. The only ally of not Armenia but de facto Armenian government is Turkey. We can recall that when this de facto government was under threat on February 2021, when the General Staff of the Armenian Armed Forces made a declaration that this government is incapable of securing our national interests, Turkey made 6 statements on higher ranking level, including Erdogan, condemning what they called coup d'etat attempt.
So while the Armenian government is busy pointing fingers and, as you're saying, not acquiring any real allies and losing the ones that we have, Azerbaijan is talking about Artsakh, then Zangezur, then Sevan, then Yerevan, and all of them without tanks. And my question was, according to the Genocide Prevention Convention, one of the definitions of genocide is any activity, and I'm quoting, that deliberately inflicts on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, for example against an ethnic or national group. And even Pashinyan has said that Azerbaijan is planning a genocide. Do you believe that a genocide of Armenians is in progress?
I believe in God. What you mentioned is not about believing, it's about analyzing. And yes, what we behold both in Artsakh and in Armenia is a manifestation of genocidal policy. For example, on April 29th of this year, if I am not mistaken, but it was this year, Ilham Aliyev made a statement saying that Armenia must not have a population over 5 million, as it is mentioned in the government program, and must not have a sound army. It's also a manifestation of genocidal intentions. And it's not only us, however, we were the first, me and my colleagues, right after the capitulation, after the war, that started speaking on this topic. But we have also international, say, partner organizations, for example, Center of Genocide Prevention after Lemkin, again, if I'm not mistaken, that made two statements this year that Turkey and Azerbaijan are conducting, let's say, soft genocide policy against Armenia. I know that no single Armenian state agency has any cooperation with this center. Only from non-state sector, from private sector. I can recall Tatoyan Foundation, founded and run by previous ombudsman Arman Tatoyan, that has some cooperation with this Lemkin Center. Why I mention all this? Because it's very hard for us to push something into mainstream that's outside of the mainstream. And talking about genocide, especially about genocide of not stateless people or some very, very minor minority, in brackets, but about a whole nation state, it's a very anti-mainstream and outside of mainstream thing. That's why I enumerated all the agents, us, Tatoyan, Lemkin Center, etc. that talk about this, because we really need to bring light on this topic, because every genocide, every great tragedy, even earthquake, with its because you cannot manage earthquake, but you can manage its aftermaths. So any single disaster with its aftermaths take place if you have this total public ignorance. The same took place in Armenia 100+ years ago, in Germany, in Rwanda, everywhere. People, the soon-to-be victims, let's say, they are ignorant of and indifferent about the surrounding events. So that's why we need to bring light on this matter.
Yeah, as one example of that, I keep bringing up the fact that there was a protest for weeks in front of the UN office, or for more than 10 days, by Artak Beglarian, former human rights ombudsman of Artsakh. And during that time, there were criticisms that Pashinyan, for instance, could have amplified Artak's voice by visiting him in person. The Armenian state media could have amplified their voice and brought a lot of sympathy and among the people to this cause, which is all not being done. So, do you agree that sort of is that like the result of ineptness, or do you believe it's more? I mean, it just doesn't fit Armenia's interests. Like many of our guests sort of have said that actually that's part of policy.
I see a very huge problem in this incompetence discourse. I mean, incompetence of the de facto government. They are not incompetent. They are very competent. The problem is what their interests are, what their agenda is, and what they want. To put it very simply in a like baby child language, what they want. We see that during all the processes that they comprehend as beneficial for them. For example, uprooting judiciary system and bringing a new one, uprooting previous police system and establishing a new one, or winning the elections, winning the pre-election campaign, etc. We see that they are very capable, and during these causes, they even have allies. They personally, as a group, as a interest group, not as a state. But when it comes to national issues, national agendas, Armenia doesn't have any single real and acting ally. On papers, of course, we have Russia, we have Iran. Like Iran is resembling like some old-style device radiating some waves and calling for cooperation, but it doesn't get back any response. So problem is not incompetence. or that they are incapable. They are trying to do good things, but at some point everything changes and they are not guilty, etc. No, they know what they want. For example, the de facto Prime Minister of Armenia back to 2001 has written an article in his own newspaper that we must give a corridor to Azerbaijan and Turkey via Zangezur because it's all they want, and why we should refrain from doing this. He has articles where he wrote that Armenia and Azerbaijan share the same fate because both of them underwent the Russian or Soviet occupation, etc., etc. So they never changed. Just in after 2008, they understood that when they are sincere, they lack larger public support. In 2008, Levon sincerely said why he is rushing to power. Again, to surrender, to give Artsakh to Azerbaijan, etc., etc. And they got very, very marginal, some 20-23% public support. Nothing changed in their views and perceptions after 2008. Just their tactics changed. And in 2018, they proclaimed that they are for every good thing and they are against for every bad thing. But the program remained the same.
Edgar, and as my last question, you talked about Iran as basically this almost like a beacon from science fiction movies, sending signals and not getting anything back. I think that's an interesting analogy. You notice many of my questions today are from a sort of a devil's advocate point of view. I want to really explain it in a contrarian perspective. So I want to explain to, let's say, my friend in the United States who is American, who has been taught through the media that Iran is bad. Iran is sort of very bad, anti-democratic, and so forth, and it should not be involved in Armenia because Armenians are Christians. Armenia wants to be democratic. Where is the division between interests of the state versus cultural, religious, and why, for instance, shouldn't the West be panic or be worried about Armenia's cooperation with Iran?
It's very interesting that in America we have Bolshevik-minded people. Why I am telling this? Because the very notion that you should construct your policy, your identity in terms of some, political regime solidarity, it's Bolshevism.
Okay.
Bolsheviks, for example, Armenian Bolsheviks, hated Dashnak government more than Turks. And they also was proclaiming this unity and solidarity of peoples, the worldwide revolution, etc. Just nowadays, the communism ideology has been transformed into, let's say, world democracy ideology, but the pattern is the same. If you are constructing your identity in terms of this not ideological, but regime solidarity, it's Bolshevism. Coming to democracy, elections in Iran are being conducted in a very open manner and very smoothly, unlike past two American elections, when we have post-election quarrels for some years and recalculation of votes in some states, districts, etc. So it's a very, very big question which country is more democratic. It's just about labeling. And like Iran, America has this monopoly to label this or that state as democratic or not democratic. Is Saudi Arabia a democratic country for America or not?
By all measures, no. But
why do they not mention this? So,
but, sort of just on that aspect, Israel, for instance, is allowed exceptions in all of these policies in terms of dealing with these states that would be considered sort of untouchable by others.
Yeah. So again, it's not about democracy; it's about interests. And the first part of coming to the very question about Iran. Do you remember I mentioned that alliances at first they are being constructed on mutual interests, on co-interestship. After the last war, Armenia and Iran has a very bold mutual interest, a very single one, but around which a whole alliance can be constructed. It's this narrow passage through Syunik that connects Iran to the northern part of the world, and from their perspective and from our perspective, that guarantee of Syunik remaining Armenian. But unfortunately, but very not surprisingly, this government doesn't undertake any actions to make this alliance with Iran. They have their own justifications, of course, as in any other case, that Iran is under sanctions, what would United States say, etc., etc. But you can put this question forward: what would United States say if you are getting something really tangible, measurable from United States in that question, for that cause, but you get nothing from the United States, and you can get something from Iran by telling something. I mean, what Iran has suggested, for example, mutual army trainings, Iranian bases in Syunik and Vyazor, and namely safeguarding the security of Syunik and Vyazor provinces. But no reaction, because, as I mentioned, this elite, as a revolutionary one, doesn't have any external agenda, any external enemies. All their agendas, all their struggle are about internal issues, internal struggle. That's why they are very successive in internal matters, in domestic politics, and losers. Our country is a loser in external policy.
Thank you, Edgar, for joining us today.
Thank you.
My name is Hovik Manucharyan. This is a collaboration between Grung and 168 Hours. Please visit podcasts.grung.org for more information, or 168 AM. Thank you for joining us, and have a nice day.